Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. Terry Gallagher. I want to welcome you back to another episode of Come and See. As you can see, this time we're kind of cramped into my little furnace room that I have for the condominium that we own. And why do we want to do that? Well, today I want to talk about what it takes to heat and cool our personal spaces. Why do we care about that? Well, because it's huge. More than a third of total global energy goes into how we condition buildings, whether we heat them up or we cool them down and everything in between. And it's only going to escalate more. Predictions are, especially air conditioning, as we heat up the globe, they're going to dramatically, in China, they're talking about 30-fold increase. Why? Well, because we're heating up the earth. And right now, there's temperatures across the globe that, frankly, you can't live in without some kind of temperature relief. I mean, how do you live at 125 degrees Fahrenheit? And even if you can, you're going to be a tad bit cranky. And so air conditioning load is going to go up, which is a feedback cycle. Because as air conditioning load goes up, we burn more fossil fuels unless we change what we're doing. So in my furnace room, we've got the basic furnace that most of us have, which is we have a furnace, and you can tell by the small exhaust pipes that it's a high efficiency furnace. That's good. The bad thing is it still burns gas. And here's the air conditioning coils coming in, and here we have the cooling coils, and you follow them up, they go all the way up to the roof of the building where the condenser and the evaporator is at. That's the typical refrigeration cycle. What I want to talk about is heat pumps. What are heat pumps? Heat pumps use the elements of a refrigeration system, a compressor, an evaporator, a relief valve, and a condenser, right? The key is they don't use refrigerant. Why is that important? Well, refrigerant, especially the chemical refrigerants that we use, are extremely hazardous in terms of global pollution, air pollution, in terms of heating up the earth. They're 100 times more powerful of greenhouse gas than CO2. You know, a couple of decades ago, we recognized that we were destroying the ozone layer with the freons that we were using, and so we changed to a different kind of refrigerant. Well, the refrigerant we changed to, it wreaks even more havoc on how much heat it traps in the atmosphere. But the other thing is, it's a gas furnace, all right? Now, that's better than an oil furnace, and certainly better than a coal furnace, but still it burns gas. It requires burning a fossil fuel and putting the pollution back out in the air. That's not all that terrible, except you got to recognize that natural gas, depending on when you measure it and how long of a cycle, is 20 to 40 times to 100 times more powerful greenhouse gas than CO2. And so our natural gas systems, the pipelines, they leak. The way we frack for natural gas leaks. And that leakage, which is now estimated between 3 and 6%, that makes it as bad as coal for trapping the heat in the atmosphere. So we need to move to a heating and a cooling system that doesn't require fossil fuels and doesn't require refrigerants. And that's where heat pumps come in. Heat pumps, like air conditioning systems, use a compressor to consolidate the heat, then use an evaporator to make the cool, then use a condenser to condense it back into liquid and start the cycle over again. But heat pumps use what's called a heat trap. Now, that heat trap could be the ground. You know, we've talked about having geothermal heating systems and cooling systems. It could be water, so like the Fox River flowing outside my condo, but if you're over by a big lakefront, it can even be the air. You can compress air systems and evaporate air systems, and you reverse it. So in the winter, you bring heat in, and in the summer, you take heat out. And it's that kind of a cycle. Now, air systems do have a limit of about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Below that, they're not as effective heating, unless you have a really good insulated house. And, well, most of us don't. And that's another subject we'll cover at a different time. But with heat pumps, we can eliminate the need to burn fossil fuels in order to comfort our houses. And with heat pumps, we can eliminate having the refrigerants, because when they leak, and all refrigeration systems leak, and release that dangerous chemical in the atmosphere and cause the escalation and the more heating of the world, which requires more air conditioning. So can we do this? can we think about a new system? Heat pumps are not a new idea. More new adaptations are coming about, and so the cost is going to come down, and as the cost comes down, so of course the application goes up. There are countries right now, like in Scandinavia and in Japan, where heat pumps combined with geothermal are what's the preferred system for heating and cooling your household. So can we take the technology that's in use in other places around and bring it here? You bet we can. You know, in the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelations, the 21st chapter, there's this amazing verse where Jesus says, "See, I'm making all things new." We really like this verse because right before it he says, "The tears will be no more." But are we ready for that? Are we willing to consider making all things new, doing away from furnaces, doing away with air conditioners, and going to systems that do not harm the earth and do not harm our kids' future? Heat pumps. Basically, they're like your refrigerator without the refrigerant. It's a known technology. The adaptations in the technology for making it more efficient and cost reducing are coming out every day. Project Drawdown shows how much we can save on this. We can actually cut the energy bills by 40% for heating and cooling our houses. Wouldn't that be worth going after? Even if we weren't concerned about our kids. And you and I, we're concerned about our kids and our grandkids. So can we do this? Absolutely, we can do this. We just need to think about upfront investments rather than being concerned about nickel and dime the investment, spending the money, because in the long term it brings back a sixfold, a sevenfold, even a tenfold savings, let alone saving the earth so that our kids have a future. So something to consider. Heat pumps instead of air conditioners and furnaces. Think about it. If you're ever going to build a house, think about if you're ever going to replace what you have. And absolutely, if you live in a temperate climate where 40s are about as low as it goes, go and use a heat pump. It's how we can save the future for our kids. So that's it for this episode of Come and See. We'll see you next time when we're actually going to be down on the Gulf Coast looking at some of the powers that could be released by tapping the oceans and the sun and the wind. Take care.
And faith is not in knowing, it's a willingness to learn. And faith is found in loving when there's nothing in return. So come and see, come and see. Around the bend, look my friend, and what could be? Come with me, come with me. There's so much more to know, so come and see. There's so much more to know, so come and see.